In a shocking moment that no one saw coming, a judge mocked Robert De Niro in a courtroom. It happened during a legal battle, and the judge thought it was just a light-hearted joke. But what happened next turned the situation completely on its head. De Niro, known for his tough guy roles in movies, didn't take kindly to the comment. Instead of getting angry or defensive, he responded in a way that no one expected. His calm and direct response completely caught the judge off guard, making him regret what he said. The courtroom fell silent, and the power shifted from the judge to De Niro in an instant. This moment wasn't just a simple courtroom exchange, it was a reminder of how sometimes people can underestimate someone based on their image, only to be proven wrong in a powerful way. The courtroom was quiet, the kind of silence that makes everyone feel uneasy. The walls were lined with wood paneling, and the atmosphere was tense. In the front, the judge sat at his bench, wearing the usual black robes, his face calm and collected. He had seen countless cases, but this one felt different. Maybe it was because of who was standing in front of him. Robert De Niro, the legendary actor known for his tough guy roles. De Niro, in his usual dark suit, stood with his lawyer, his face serious but not angry. He didn't seem bothered by the whole situation, but it was clear that this wasn't a normal case. The judge, perhaps feeling a little too comfortable, glanced at De Niro and made a joke. It wasn't a funny one, but the judge seemed to think it would lighten the mood. The courtroom murmured. Some people chuckled nervously, unsure of how to react. Others looked at each other, surprised that the judge would make such a comment. De Niro didn't seem offended at first, but the judge's words were not the kind of thing you'd expect in a place like a courtroom. The judge probably thought it would be a harmless bit of humor. Little did he know, it would lead to something far more dramatic. The judge continued, unaware of how his words were starting to shift the energy in the room. His tone was casual, almost dismissive. To him it was just another day in court, but for De Niro, it wasn't just another day, and the people in the courtroom could sense something was about to happen. The judge's comment came out of nowhere. With a slight grin, he turned to De Niro and said, "Well, it's not every day we see a Hollywood star in my courtroom. Should I ask for your autograph, or do you just want to sit back and act like you're in a movie?" A few people in the room shifted uncomfortably. Some nervously laughed, unsure if it was meant to be funny, or if the judge was crossing a line. De Niro stood there, his face unreadable, but the judge didn't seem to notice. He went on with his casual tone, completely unaware of how his words might have landed. It seemed like the kind of comment someone might make to break the tension, but it felt off. De Niro wasn't in a movie scene, he was in a serious courtroom, and the judge's words didn't feel respectful, they felt like an attempt to belittle the actor. It was one of those moments when a joke might feel harmless to the person telling it, but everyone else can tell it wasn't really funny. As the words hung in the air, the judge likely thought he'd lighten the mood, but the courtroom fell silent. De Niro didn't laugh, he didn't smile, instead he stood there, waiting. The people in the room could feel the shift, and they began to wonder, how would the actor respond? Was he going to let the judge's comment slide, or would this turn into something much bigger? For a moment there was a heavy silence in the courtroom. De Niro didn't react immediately, he didn't snap back or show any sign of being angry. Instead he stood there for a few seconds, letting the words of the judge hang in the air. It wasn't the kind of response people were expecting, but it was clear that De Niro was thinking carefully about how to respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "I'm not here for jokes," he said, his tone measured, but his words carrying weight. The entire courtroom seemed to lean in, sensing the shift in energy. The judge, still sitting at his bench, looked slightly surprised. De Niro's voice wasn't raised, but there was a quiet authority behind it. It was clear that this wasn't a moment to take lightly. De Niro continued, speaking directly to the judge, "This is a serious matter, and I'm here because I take it seriously." His words were simple, but they cut through the tension in the room. It wasn't just the way he spoke, but the way he carried himself that made everyone listen. Robert De Niro wasn't just some actor who could be dismissed with a joke, he was a man who knew the value of respect, and he wasn't going to let the judge's comment slide. The judge, who had probably expected De Niro to brush off the comment with humor, now found himself in an uncomfortable position. He could see that De Niro wasn't joking. His calm demeanor only made the moment more intense. The courtroom, which had been filled with nervous chuckles just moments before, now felt tense and silent. Every eye in the room was on the judge, waiting to see how he would react. De Niro didn't give the judge a chance to respond immediately. He stood there, unmoving, as if waiting for the judge to realize the gravity of the situation. The room remained still, and the judge's face slowly began to change. The smugness he had earlier was gone, replaced by an expression of uncertainty. He didn't know what to say. The tension was palpable. De Niro's words had struck a chord, not just with the judge, but with everyone present. It was a reminder that sometimes, even the most powerful people need to be reminded of what respect looks like. And in this moment, it was Robert De Niro who was teaching that lesson. The judge's face shifted as soon as De Niro finished speaking. The moment the words left De Niro's mouth, the judge realized that he had crossed a line. The confident, almost playful attitude he had just moments before vanished, replaced by something far less certain. For a few seconds, he didn't know how to respond. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. His usual authority was slipping away, and it was clear he wasn't used to being put in this position. The courtroom, once filled with a nervous energy, now felt suffocatingly quiet. The people sitting in the gallery could feel the tension in the air, waiting to see if the judge would recover, or if this moment would become something bigger. The judge quickly tried to regain control. He cleared his throat, a nervous gesture that didn't go unnoticed. His fingers tapped against the bench, a small sign of his discomfort. He glanced at De Niro, but the actor stood there, still and unwavering, making it clear that he wasn't backing down. The judge's attempt to steer the situation back to his usual confident self was failing. "Mr. De Niro, my tem," the judge began, but his words trailed off. He was struggling to find the right way to apologize, but nothing seemed to come out right. The brief pause that followed felt like an eternity. De Niro didn't interrupt him. He just stood there, quietly, waiting for the judge to collect himself. It was clear that he wasn't angry, just disappointed, maybe. His calm presence only made the judge feel more awkward. The judge shifted in his seat, his face reddening slightly. The room was silent. The people in the courtroom knew that they were witnessing a rare moment of vulnerability from someone who was supposed to command respect. The judge finally let out a small sigh and spoke again, this time with a little less confidence. "I apologize if my comment was out of place," he said, his voice slightly shaking. It wasn't a full apology, but it was clear that the judge understood his mistake. Still, he could not take back the words he had said. The damage had been done. The courtroom was still, but there was an odd sense of relief in the air. The tension seemed to lift slightly, but the uncomfortable feeling lingered. The judge had tried to recover, but the power had shifted. He had mocked a man who was not just a celebrity, but someone who commanded respect in a way he hadn't expected. De Niro remained calm, not acknowledging the judge's apology with a word, but with a simple nod. His response wasn't loud, but it was powerful. It made the judge realize that this moment wasn't about humor. It wasn't about being the bigger person. It was about respecting the seriousness of the situation, and De Niro had shown him that. The moment De Niro spoke, everything changed. The courtroom that had once felt like a place of authority, now seemed more like a stage, and the judge, who had thought his joke was harmless, suddenly appeared small. The balance of power had shifted, and it was clear that the judge realized too late that mocking someone like Robert De Niro wasn't the smartest choice. The atmosphere in the room was different now. It wasn't just the judge who had changed. The people in the courtroom could feel the shift. Some had been unsure whether they should laugh at the judge's joke, but now they understood that it wasn't about humor. It was about respect, and De Niro had set the tone. For the judge, it was a learning moment. He had underestimated De Niro's ability to handle the situation with grace. What had started as a joke had turned into a powerful reminder that sometimes, actions speak louder than words. The judge realized that his position of authority didn't mean he could belittle others, no matter who they were, and even if it was a joke, it wasn't something to take lightly. De Niro's response didn't just shut down the judge's comment, it made the judge see the situation in a completely different light. The judge, now visibly uncomfortable, knew that he had made a mistake. He couldn't take back his words, but he could take this moment as a lesson that in the end wasn't just about respect for De Niro, but about respecting everyone who steps into that courtroom. After the tension of that moment, the courtroom slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the impact lingered. The judge, still trying to regain his composure, moved forward with the case, but his earlier confidence had been shaken. The respect that De Niro had earned with just a few calm words couldn't be ignored. People in the room could feel the difference, and it was clear the judge had learned something that day. Sometimes, words can't be taken back. Outside the courtroom, the incident quickly became the talk of the town. News outlets picked up the story, and the video of the moment spread across social media. People were fascinated by the way De Niro had handled the situation. They admired how he didn't lash out, but instead, calmly reminded the judge of the seriousness of the proceedings. It wasn't just a celebrity getting revenge, it was a person standing up for respect in a powerful way. For De Niro, this wasn't just about getting back at the judge, it was about showing that no one should be treated with disrespect, no matter their status. The actor didn't need to make a scene, his response said everything. His calm, collected manner was all the proof anyone needed to see that he wasn't someone to be taken lightly. As for the judge, the days and weeks that followed were anything but easy. The public response was mixed. Some people sympathized with him, understanding that everyone makes mistakes, while others were less forgiving, criticizing him for his lack of professionalism in such a serious setting. News outlets replayed the moment endlessly, dissecting his words and De Niro's response. Social media buzzed with opinions, some mocking the judge, others praising De Niro for his composure. The judge found himself at the center of a storm he never anticipated, and it weighed heavily on him. But amidst the noise, one thing became clear: he had learned a valuable lesson in humility. The sting of his mistake lingered, not just because it was public, but because it forced him to confront his own behavior. He replayed the moment in his mind over and over, the casual tone of his voice, the dismissive joke, the way the room had fallen silent. He thought about De Niro's calm but piercing response, the way the actor had stood there, unshaken, commanding respect without raising his voice. It was a moment of reckoning for the judge, one that made him question how he had allowed himself to become so careless in his role. His apology, though public, felt inadequate to him. He knew words couldn't undo what had happened, but they were all he had. He hoped, in some small way, that his acknowledgement of the mistake would show he was willing to grow from it. The experience stayed with him, not just as a professional embarrassment, but as a personal wake-up call. He began to reflect on how he treated people in his courtroom, not just the high-profile cases, but every single person who stood before him. He realized that respect wasn't something he could demand simply because of his position, it was something he had to earn through his actions. Moving forward, the judge approached his role differently. He became more mindful of his words, more aware of the power they carried. He listened more intently, spoke more carefully, and treated everyone who entered his courtroom with the same level of dignity, regardless of their background or status. The incident became a turning point for him, a reminder that even those in positions of authority are not infallible. It humbled him in a way that no reprimand or criticism ever could. The courtroom itself returned to its usual rhythm, with cases being heard and decisions being made as they always were. But for those who had witnessed the exchange between the judge and De Niro, the moment lingered in their minds. It wasn't just about the judge's mistake or De Niro's response, it was about the broader lesson it carried. It was a reminder that respect is fragile, that words have weight, and that even the smallest moments can leave a lasting impact. For the judge, the experience became a part of his story, a chapter he couldn't erase but one he could learn from. It changed him, not just as a judge, but as a person. And while the public eventually moved on to the next big story, the lesson stayed with him, shaping how he carried himself both in and out of the courtroom. That moment, a small one, at the time, became something no one who witnessed it would forget anytime soon, least of all the judge himself.